am ready to put on a show! I am ready to put on a show!
Disappear! Disappear!
I am ready to put on a show!
We are undefeatable!
Us against the world!
Disappear!
I am ready to put on a show!
Disappear!
Undefeatable!
Marvel Rivals, everyone's new favorite game to hate. Let me preface that I don't hate Rivals. I've been playing it since it came out and I have no plans to stop. But the more I've played, the more I've noticed small issues with its hero design that have slowly been rippling into larger problems with Rivals' overall game design. At the time of writing this video, it's the very beginning of Season 3, so some of the things I say may or may not be outdated, as I don't expect this video to be finished before Season 3.5 is out. Many Rivals players are also Overwatch players, but comparing Rivals to Overwatch has been done to death already, and I was never much of an Overwatch player.
Monsieur, does this mean Overwatch is back?
No.
So for the sake of this video, I'll be comparing Rivals to the game that got me into hero shooters, Paladins. Now Paladins is also far from perfect. It has a lot of its own issues, to say the least. Anyone even remotely familiar with this game knows that it's not exactly up to modern, or even old quality standards for that matter. Frankly, I'm amazed it lasted as long as it did before they pulled it off life support. That said, when it comes to a strictly hero design standpoint, I firmly believe that Paladins is, with a few exceptions, far better than Rivals. If there's anything in this video that everybody will probably agree on, it's that support ults are terrible. It's become a meme in the community about how half of the Rivals support ults are all just a big circle of invincibility with very little counterplay. But my concern isn't just that these ults are too strong or even boring. It's that every single strategist ult heals your team, or at the very least is capable of directly keeping them alive, with Jeff being the only real exception, even though he does technically heal. The problem with this is that it hurts the identity of each strategist. Of the 13 supports in Paladins, only 4 do significant healing with their ultimates, with 7 doing no healing at all. In Paladins, the purpose of a support ult isn't to keep your team alive, it's to set up your team for success. Exhibit A is Furia, whose ult gives her entire team 30% increased damage and movement speed. Or Maldamba, who throws a bomb that causes enemies to run away in fear. The point I'm trying to make is that these ults provide value outside of raw healing output. Their purpose is to give their team an opportunity to either get eliminations or to get out of danger, rather than just doing it for them. These ults have potential for massive team plays, but it's also easy to whiff most of them. Maybe your team doesn't attack with you when you pop Furia's ult. Maybe you just miss with your Damba bomb. There's a level of risk and reward that just isn't there in Rivals. At most you might get hit by a Magneto or Iron Man counter ult, but that's about it. The majority of the Rivals roster can't do anything but just wait until they're allowed to do something again. It isn't fun to play, and it especially isn't fun to play against. Something else that just kinda irks me about how ults work in this game is how inconsistent their windups are. Some characters have long windups and others fire instantly, and it feels almost random between heroes. Obviously team wiping abilities like Wanda or Iron Man are gonna have long windups. So then why does Hawkeye have almost the same time as Iron Man? Why does Groot fire instantly? Why does Spider-Man fire instantly? Why does Hulk have a long windup despite arguably having the worst ult since launch? Sure, it's a negligible issue, but it still just doesn't make any sense. As a Paladins player going into Rivals, something I had to get used to was counterpicking. In Paladins, you lock your hero at the start, and that's who you've got until the game is over. I've seen people describe Rivals as a sort of dance of constant counterpicking. You need to understand what subclass each hero is and know how to play with your team's and the enemy team's compositions. If Rivals has dance design, then I'll say that Paladins has clash design. Since there's no swapping in Paladins, you need to make do with who you have, a large part of that being through the item shop and loadout systems. Even if a character on the enemy team counters you, it's still possible to get value or even outperform the person who's technically supposed to counter you, but only if you play your cards right. This system is much more reliant on player performance and strategy than it is in Rivals, where you can hard counter a hero simply by existing as another hero. I'm not going to say that one of these designs is objectively better than the other overall, They each have their own strengths and weaknesses, and much of it does come down to personal preference. But with each update, more and more of the weaknesses of Rivals' design appear to me, and if NetEase doesn't course correct, then it will continue to get worse. As I was writing this section on design, I remembered an old video I saw years ago called an actual review of Overwatch and Paladins from Shammy. I went and rewatched it, and I realized that a lot of the things Shammy criticized Overwatch for all the way back in 2018 also apply to Rivals today. If you want the most detailed, go watch the original video, but for the purposes of my video, the most relevant point was about how each Overwatch hero is designed around a very specific and narrow purpose.
Every character feels as though they're designed to fulfill a single specific job, which is good in the sense that it keeps heroes from being redundant, and if nothing else, you have to hand it to Blizzard for being great businessmen. Assigning every character a specific role makes the game significantly easier to get into, because the second you pick a hero, it's hard not to understand what you're supposed to be doing. But the catch there is that what you're supposed to be doing is the only thing you can do. The kits given to Overwatch's heroes are generally pretty fun to play around with, but by streamlining them to this degree, Blizzard has carved out a distinct, correct way to play each of them, and I can't help but see that as a misunderstanding of what makes hero-based games interesting long-term. I love some of the playstyles they've carved out. Perfectly timing Zarya bubbles and face-tanking damage to keep your energy up so that you can melt enemies is incredibly fun and satisfying to pull off consistently, but when it's all you're doing in every game, it gets stale pretty quickly. Heroes in Overwatch are meant to be played as, not with. I don't have a playstyle with Zarya. Zarya has a playstyle. The only major benefits of streamlining to this degree is that it theoretically makes balancing easier, because you can directly nerf and buff a hero's single defining strength rather than dealing with the intricacies of an actual kit.
Dance design, as it's applied in Rivals, limits players' skill expression. Heroes are designed specifically to counter and to be countered. Notice I didn't say they're designed with strengths and weaknesses. The reason I say this is that sometimes Rivals feels less like a hero shooter and more like an obnoxiously long game of rock, paper, scissors. In any conversation about counters, eventually someone's gonna bring up Black Panther, and nobody's gonna agree on a single thing. My problem with Panther isn't that he's too strong or that he has too many counters. My problem with Panther is that his kit is just stupid. His kit is not designed in a way that allows for any creative or flexible usage. There's plenty of creative thinking that you can do with his mobility and positioning options, but that more or less goes for every hero. With each match, you'll see the same repetitive combos out of him over and over again, with very little variation. And don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming Panther players for doing this. They have to do this if they want to get value out of their character. It's just how he works, and that's the problem. To get a kill on a full health support, you almost always need to burn through every single one of his cooldowns at once. His kit might as well not even exist outside of his cooldowns. His passive is negligible at best, his primary earned him the name Tickle Monster, and his ultimate is effectively just a third spear. Panther is unique in that nobody can agree if he's overpowered or underpowered. Panther players say he does no damage and has way too many counters. Support players say he's way too fast to ever react to. But here's the thing. They're both correct. A good Panther is nearly impossible to track, but the aforementioned thing can theoretically shut down Panther just by existing, like I said earlier. Panther has a lot of counters. Everyone should agree with this. But counters are not counterplay. Unlike most other dive characters, Panther requires the entire enemy team to play around him. Tanks, DPS, supports, they all need to be actively paying attention to where he is at all times. The thing hard counters Panther on paper, but in order to actually do that, the thing needs to essentially babysit his supports, or else he can't get to them in time to save them, which means the thing is already losing value by not being on the front lines. In a perfect scenario with perfect teamwork, Panther is borderline unusable, but that just isn't the case 99% of the time. You can say skill issue all you want, but that's just ignoring the problem. A hero can't just be theoretically counterable, they need to be reasonably counterable. The difference between Panther and the other dive DPSs is that Panther is made to be countered before he attacks you. If he gets close enough to hit you, the fight might as well be over already. There's no outplaying someone with him. He either instantly kills you, or he doesn't. And either way, there's rarely counterplay involved from either side. A Panther is more likely to just miss his dash than the person being attacked is to land a stun on him. This sums up the biggest difference between dive DPS in Rivals and flanks in Paladins. Flanks have high burst damage, but it's low enough for the person being attacked to reasonably respond. If the person being attacked is skilled enough, they survive. If not, they die. It's about performance and not prediction. Now, that's not to say that prediction shouldn't be a factor when it comes to dive. It absolutely should be. It needs to be. But it shouldn't be the only factor. Prediction should give you an edge over the person attacking you. It should help you survive. It shouldn't be the singular reason you're able to survive. If you're out of position or you blew your survivability cooldowns too early, you should be punished for that. But neither of these things usually matter with BP, because if you didn't see him coming, then you're dead regardless. Again, I'm not here to argue that Black Panther needs a nerf, or even that he's unbalanced in either direction. He's both severely overpowered and underpowered on a case-by-case basis, which is why he never gets touched balance-wise. It's impossible to fairly balance him due to how his kit fundamentally functions. Without a major rework, it will continue just being a playground slap fight between Black Panther and support players. I recognize that swapping is an inherent part of dance design, but if the only way to realistically counter one hero is for multiple heroes on the opposing team to swap, then that hero is a problem. I've been ranting about Panther for a while now, but this problem isn't exclusive to him. It's just that he's the worst offender of what I'm talking about with dance design's issues. In Season 2.5, they added Ultron, yet another permanently flying character, making the total amount in Rivals 4. This is especially horrible as a tank main, because every tank in Rivals is either melee or has very short range. Magneto is the one and only tank that can reliably deal with flyers using his primary, and even then he's only meh at doing that. 2 tanks have been added since launch, and neither of them have good range. That's 2 wasted opportunities to fix this issue that NetEase chose not to take. Again, compare this to Paladins and the difference is night and day. It's not hard to have tank variety. They tried to somewhat remedy this by giving the Thing the ability to knock down flyers, but this is a band-aid solution that doesn't address the core issue. Permanently flying characters should not exist. They are a fundamentally bad idea, especially for a game like Rivals, where they need to make kits based around existing characters, many of which couldn't really have a ranged primary that fits their character. My solution is to rework flyers to work more like Paladin's Drogos, or Overwatch's Pharah. Make them a kind of bouncy jetpack character. If not that, then give them some kind of fuel so they can only stay in the air for a limited amount of time. Or maybe the higher they go, the slower they move. Anything that stops them from perpetually being in the sky. Once again, if swapping is the one and only reasonable solution to dealing with a hero merely existing, that hero is a problem. The reason I should have to swap is because someone is playing a hero who counters me, and I'm not good enough to outperform them due to the disadvantage. I shouldn't have to swap because I have literally no other option. Swapping should be based on player performance, not hero viability. Flanderization is the process through which a fictional character's essential traits are oversimplified and exaggerated to the point where they constitute their entire personality over the course of a serial work. Does this sound familiar? It should, because it's already happened in Rivals. I've been a Thor main since I started playing this game, and it just pains me to see how his balancing has been handled. Thor has never been particularly strong, but he did always have some place within the meta in at least the first few seasons as a solid B-tier character. His issue became that he lacked the survivability of the other tanks. The devs noticed this, and I thought all would be well. Maybe he'd get more health or the shield of some kind. Turns out, their solution to this survivability problem was to nerf his survivability, in favor of letting him use Awakening Rune more often.
What the fuck? No!
Now, obviously, this change did far more harm than good, not just to his viability in the meta, but to Thor's identity as a hero as well. Thor was flanderized in that the rest of his kit was diminished in order to further strengthen his already most powerful ability. He was already the highest DPS tank. He did not need a damage increase. The reason I liked Thor in the first place was because he played very similarly to my Paladin's main, Khan. They're both brawler off tanks that are great at applying pressure to off angles, denying the enemy team breathing room, and helping flanks attack the backline. But the more changes Thor gets, the less he plays like this. These changes came at the cost of what made Thor, for little to no benefit in the meta. Gonna put my tinfoil hat on for this one, but I'm beginning to genuinely think that the devs regret making Thor a tank and are now trying to slowly turn him into a duelist. I can't think of any other reason they'd be balancing him like this. All they have to do is just revert him back to how he was before Season 2.5, and maybe give some slight buffs to his HP and ultimate, but for some reason they insist on doing literally anything but that. Thor used to have a well-rounded kit, but they just keep funneling absolutely everything into Awakening Rune. His entire playstyle revolves around Rune now. I just don't get it. Editing Blue Zerg here. I'm just now finishing up the video, and I saw the patch notes for Season 4 come out. And yes, Season 4. It's taken me an entire season to make this video. Just don't worry about it. Anyway. They've made a lot of changes to Thor since I wrote these paragraphs. In the span of a full season, nothing they've done has really changed my opinion on this. I'm recording this now because I feel like I'm going to get some comments about it. But the first change they made after what I'm talking about was they made it so Thor's bubble knocks down flyers, which, again, it's another thing Band-Aid solution. But sure, it's a buff. It's nice. And then they gave him a Thor Force right after Rune Awakening ends, which... yes, it's technically a survivability increase, but the problem is it's directly tied to Rune. And my point is that his entire kit just revolves around Rune now, and this buff is just adding on to that problem. And then in Season 4, they're giving him a team up with Angela, which it just helps him dive better, I guess. I suppose maybe you could use it as an anchor to get out of a fight or something like that. But... I was really hoping, because I was expecting this video to take forever to make. I was praying that something would change with Thor, that they would just give him some kind of actual survivability back, and they didn't. A full season, and they have yet to prove me wrong. But hey, the ult buff is nice, I guess. When it comes to actual duelists, the way some of their kits are handled is just weird to me. The discourse around Black Widow has already been particularly confusing. She's been one of the worst heroes in the game since launch, and most of the discussion around her is a back and forth of, Widow is too weak, she needs to one-shot headshot, and haven't you played Overwatch? One-shot headshots are bad. Like, how about we give her more than one actual ability before we start talking about one-shot headshots? She isn't viable because there's no room to realistically do anything outside of just sitting behind your team sniping. Shotgun Widow playstyles would maybe be viable if her batons did literally anything and she had some kind of survivability, but until then, she's just stuck in balance limbo. To me, Hawkeye falls into this category too, although Hawkeye's primary is more than strong enough to make up for his lack of a real kit, but he's still forced into an incredibly specific and limiting playstyle. His exploding arrows are useless outside of very specific cases with his ultimate, his hypersonic arrow is lackluster at best, and his Crescent Slash is just for keeping dive off of him. Punisher, Hela, Phoenix, all just hit-scan poke characters. Their roles are so similar that they could all essentially just be the same hero. They are almost entirely interchangeable. Then there's Squirrel Girl. I don't need to explain why she's poorly designed. I get that the game needs some easier entry-level heroes, but like, I think we went a little overboard here. Going back to supports, it feels like NetEase skipped the trouble and already had them flanderized before they even came out. Luna Snow, Cloak and Dagger, Invisible Woman, Rocket, they're all cartoonishly basic examples of a healer character. These four heroes are almost interchangeable within any given team comp, and a lot of people find them boring to play. The reason for this is very simple. Their primary source of healing all come from spamming left click. Yes, I know Rocket right clicks, but it's the same thing. They're heal bots. Supports do need to put effort into not dying to dive and to paying attention to their surroundings. I'm not saying the support role is easy, I'm saying that each individual support is easy. Their skill lies with what each support needs to do outside of healing. The problem is that healing is their primary job, and the way these heroes do that just isn't fun or difficult. If you ask someone which strategist they actually find fun, you'll probably hear Atom, Ultron, Mantis, or maybe Loki. What these characters all have in common is that their primary source of healing comes from ability usage, the same way almost every single support does in Paladins. These heroes are allowed to be aggressive when the time is right. There's actual thought put into how they're going to go about healing their team. Doing things other than healing is also rewarded. However, there is a difference between those 4 Rivals supports and all of the Paladin supports. That being, the Paladin supports have enough healing to sustain their team, while the Rivals heroes don't. Every support in Rivals that doesn't use left click to heal has a significantly lower or less consistent healing output than those who do. This has led to the strategist that most people actually find fun only being viable in triple support compositions, or solo tank compositions if they're double support. Don't get me wrong, I think it's good for the game to have strategists with lower healing output that provide value in other ways. I'd just like to see an actual healer character that heals in a way other than just spammy heal botting. Healers don't have to be boring. If you main strategist, then I would highly recommend playing at least a few matches of Paladins as a support character. It cannot be overstated how much more interesting and dynamic they are. One of the initial selling points about Rivals for me was the team-up system, but after actually playing the game, I realized how lackluster and boring most of them are. Prior to playing, I thought they would encourage coordinated teamwork and add another layer of depth to each hero, but unfortunately a lot of them, well, most of them, are just flat power increases. Scarlet Witch can continue spamming, but better. Squirrel Girl can continue spamming, but better. The Thing and Mr. Fantastic are both already very durable characters. Add Invisible Woman and now they're more durable. Normally with Namor, you need to decide when you're gonna throw each turret. If they both die instantly, you're left at a big disadvantage. But you add Hulk and now you have a third one with more health and more damage. Most of the team-ups that actually require 2 players to work together just aren't good. Fastball Special is funny and does have its moments here and there, but almost every other team-up is just so much more valuable. In my opinion, team-ups should require at least some input from both players in one way or another, and should actually reward teamwork like Fastball Special does. If they're not working directly with each other, then one player's action should affect the other somehow. Maybe Strange can give Scarlet Witch a damage boost, but then Strange can't use his shield while it's active. Team-up anchors are also just confusing. Why are they permanently active for the whole season? For the longest time I thought they only did something if the team-up was active, but nope, anchor bonuses are always there. If it's a season-wide thing, then just apply the stat change to the hero themselves and ditch the concept of an anchor altogether. Team-ups are less teaming up and more you get a free reward if you happen to be using the right person. Obviously all of this is much less of an issue than everything I've mentioned so far, but this is still a huge waste of what could be a really cool and unique gameplay mechanic. And to me, that sentiment applies to Rivals as a whole. Missed potential. I want Marvel Rivals to succeed. I'd been excited for it since I heard the rumors about a Marvel hero shooter years ago. The same way that I think Paladins is a good game despite it being held together with duct tape and string, I think Rivals is a good game despite its backwards kit design. There's always going to be people crying doom and gloom over the smallest things. Marvel Rivals is not dead, nor is it dying, and listening to people who spout nonsense like that is how you actually kill a game. There's a lot it does right and there's a lot it does wrong. I made this video to verbalize what I know a lot of people already have in the back of their heads. There's nothing wrong with liking something despite its flaws, but it's also important to have high standards for the games you choose to play. Rivals is good, but it can be better.